Anyway, I'm Morag Gamble from Our Permaculture Life, and I'm in Nairobi at the moment in Kenya with Natalie Topa. And Natalie has the most amazing permaculture gardens on her verandas. But it's not just any kind of permaculture garden. There's a really deep meaning for why you have these permaculture gardens here, and the experiments that you're doing are really amazing. And I'm so interested to be able to share your experience of all the different projects that you're experimenting with here and why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. Welcome. It's been great having you. I've been living in this apartment for 10 years almost, and I've been in the region of East Africa for almost 15, and I started seeing a lot of the same patterns, right? Food and water insecurity, energy insecurity, and seeing the drought flood cycle impacting a lot of different countries here in the region. And so through my work, I'm working with various agencies, and my personal interests in food and cooking and gardening, it just all started to fill out one large picture for me. So I studied permaculture formally and informally, and I just started to see how that can play out in my life, and it really is a big part of my personal value system and my ethic. And so I realized that, you know, a lot of permies want to go and buy a big piece of land and do all kinds of things, but we don't all have that opportunity, at least not right away. And so it's a matter of just starting with where we are and with what we have. And so I do live in an apartment, and I thought, well, if I don't have space, I have to make space.
But also because you're not here often as well,
Right.
and so having something that's manageable within so it works around your work life, and you take the lessons that you learn here and apply them directly into the workplaces where you are, which are people that don't have much land as well. And so the strategies and the simple small-scale strategies that can make an enormous difference in people's lives.
Yeah, so I currently work with the Danish Refugee Council, and I'm the Regional Resilience and Livelihoods Coordinator for East Africa and Great Lakes region. So I cover 10 countries where we work with displacement-affected communities. That means refugees and internally displaced people, but also the communities that host them that are strained by suddenly having tens of thousands of new people in a place where they don't even have the services that they have.
So you were saying before, there's how many displaced people in the world currently?
I mean, there's between 70 and 80 million. But when we talk about mixed migration, people are moving all the time for a lot of different reasons. I'm a migrant. You know, I'm living in Kenya. My family were immigrants to the U.S. from Poland and Ukraine. People move for education, for work, but also because of ecological degradation and increasing climate extremes that also can lead to conflict between communities. So as resources become more strained in East Africa, we have pastoralists and farmers who rely on soil and water and viable rangeland grasses and biodiversity, which are being depleted, and so that also adds to displacement. So in my work, I'm always looking at how, you know, what kinds of solutions can somebody who's displaced have just in their immediate environment around their shelter. And also looking at the camp and settlement environment and how do we bring in ecology and gray water management and integrated waste management systems. And so I'm applying my ethics to those systems, but I'm also testing a lot of things here. So I can go ahead and talk about...
So where does it all start for you?
Well, so, you know, as somebody who has studied permaculture, we talk a lot about energy and entropic loss. And when energy comes into my system, which is the apartment, I want it to have as many spins on the merry-go-round before it goes out. And I want my waste to leave through the toilet and not through the garbage bin. And so what that means is that, you know, I really try to reduce plastic. You can't get away from it completely, but I really try to be very conscientious about what's coming in to my apartment. And so if it's carbon, I bring cardboard boxes from the office and paper shreds. I never use my waste bin at the office because it just goes into a Disneyland of disease, as I call it, that magical place called away. And so I would rather bring that home. And then, of course, the kitchen is sort of the engine of a lot of you know, waste from food waste and things like that. So from the kitchen, if we have potato peels and food waste, it's got a few kind of choose your own adventure pathways. So if I'm a carrot peel or a paper shred, there's a couple options. We can come into the warm bins. So yes, I'm actually doing vermicomposting, vermiculture in my apartment, and I've got a couple of worm bins This green one, which I brought in from the US, but really it's not necessary. We also have just some waste material. It was a bin that got cracked and broken, so we're reusing that. And each of these has earthworms inside of it. So food waste, paper shreds, sawdust, things like that go into either of those. Or waste can come to the chicken coop, because there is a chicken coop on my balcony. So here, and the reason I have a chicken coop is because I want compost. And so these are the chickens. We just mixed up the cardboard. But waste does come into the chicken coop. So paper shreds, cardboard, sawdust, charcoal dust. And the chickens spend all day long scratching and mechanically breaking down all this waste and adding their little nitrogen deposits. And then what happens is we take this compost after, we mix it for a couple of weeks, and when it starts to break down and become nice and rich, we then put it into these gunia bags, which are gunny sacks. And we'll put a few handfuls of earthworms in there and then just leave them for as long as we want, 6 months, 10 months. And then I'm to a point where I produce so much compost that I have to give it to my friends
so
and farmers. I gave 12 gunny bags like that to a friend of mine on her farm.
Yeah.
So the idea that I'm in an apartment and producing more compost that I can use, because I also do need compost, and so then that compost will go from the gunny sacks to these containers where we just harvested, so it doesn't look that green and lush, but we've just replanted with Swiss chard and collards and kale and spinach and different herbs. And so that's on the pots. But some people, as I said, if you don't have space, make space. So we have actually gone up the walls with just a really inexpensive sisal string that anybody can buy here. And then also over the top.
That's so great too. It's such a simple strategy.
Yeah, it's really inexpensive. And if you're in a refugee camp, you can use shoelaces and wires and cables and fabric that's shredded and just create a climbing surface to do beans, and add any bit of nutrition will help in that setting. So here we've got Malabar spinach, and one of the things that I do here is I'm always trying to propagate things that I can easily share with people in the refugee camps. So here, for example, in northern Kenya, there's a refugee camp named Kakuma. We also have Dadaab refugee camp that has a lot of Somali refugees. And so I can easily clip off, some of these vines, send those along with other seeds and cuttings from cassava, strawberries, sweet potatoes. I've got a whole basket of sweet potatoes right behind here. So these, if I just clip off one of these vines and send it to the camp, then people can easily grow that, and it's a great cover crop because we're talking about hot, dry, arid places where it's difficult to grow food.
And an immediate green as well as, a starchy vegetable as well. So, it's an amazing resource. And the same with the cassava. So, do they eat the leaves there too?
It depends. Different cultures will use food in different ways, but most everyone here does know cassava. This was we're recycling our coffee bags. We found a mango pit that had sprouted in the compost,
fantastic.
and so we're just going to try to grow a mango tree out of that and send it to Susie's farm.
Pawpaw, banana.
The female papaya was planted here, but got diseased and died. But we got papayas out of that. We've got this banana tree growing. So, it's a lot of stuff that can happen in a small place. And a funny thing is, I used to have a hanging basket here with flowers, but it had a sisal basket, and I noticed that the birds were shredding the sisal basket.
Oh, wow.
And they were destroying the basket. So it had a hanging basket, and I saw that the birds were destroying the basket, so I decided to make them their own basket, and I've got that basket here, and it's full of sisal string but also hair. So when I go and get a haircut, I don't leave my precious carbon on that dirty floor.
And there's so much that comes out of hairdressing salons.
Oh yeah.
But, unfortunately, a lot of it's kind of plastic hair these days. But so, you've got real hair, collect it and use it.
Yeah, so a lot of people put yarn and synthetic strings and stuff for the birds, but I just as soon leave that out of the system, out of this, the ecosystem. Yeah. So the birds actually started, it's not here now because we had to redo this trellis, but they started to build a nest out of my hair right in that, behind that log.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
you don't just have one balcony either, do you?
No, I don't. I have another one, and we'll go there in a minute. But I just wanted to also say that here in this small space, the earthworms, not only do they make castings from which we make liquid compost tea, but they feed the chickens. And then we've also got, I'm doing some, a lot of it's experimental. I'm learning, I'm YouTubing, but we've got these beetles which make.
And what sort of beetles are these?
I can't remember the name of the beetles, but they're the typical ones for making these mealworms. And so, I'm just using recycled containers here from cleaning products that we use from our dishwashing soap and stuff. And then this, I'm just trying to get the production up now, but then we'll start to feed this to the chickens. And I'm really experimenting with this because this is something that if I were a refugee woman, I could feed that to chickens, I could sell them, have an income source, increase the nutrition of my animals. And so on top of that, we're also doing some mushroom production here. So we're really trying to optimize the use of space here.
So just coming back to the chickens then. So the food for the chickens is the mealworms, earthworms, greens from your garden, food scraps from the kitchen.
A lot of food scraps, greens from the garden. We give them a few beetles and mealworms, but right now the focus is on getting the production up and just testing how does this system work.
And so then you can take breeding packs out to the communities as well.
Yeah, and I have people who come here and get worms and who get mealworms, and even in our office I've started a worm compost so people can just feel free to come and grab some earthworms whenever they want.
And that's the amazing thing, that even from a very small space and a small worm farm, that you can start to cultivate this abundance, like simply by passing out a little bit that can be multiplied, which kind of just keeps breeding and breeding.
It's like seed.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. Abundance can come from small places.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so, here we're trying to also experiment with some mushroom production. So we're using millet to myceliate and colonize these grains for maitake mushrooms, shiitake, pink oyster, white oyster, and then I transfer them into these bags of sawdust that I sterilize, and you can see that's also starting to colonize. And then what I'll do is I'll create a condition in another room where it's breezy and humid and cut these so we get the fruiting. So, I'm just trying to learn and understand what kind of level of effort is required to go into this and technical know-how, and is it feasible for people who have low capacity for these kinds of things to have income opportunities as well as nutrition. So
I actually remember up in the very hilly areas of Bali, really poor communities. They started up two main enterprises up there. One was a mushroom production, and another one was natural soap production. And from that they started and value-adding of fruits. So they would be harvesting a whole lot of things, and that transformed that whole community, that network of women who started those enterprises from a community hub, and just made such a difference. Simple, small-scale production that can be done in small spaces.
And it's also in a lot of the camps, what we have is waste. And so if you can add value to waste, that is magic.
And then when you're finished with the mushrooms, the material that comes out of the bags goes back into the system.
And then just really quickly, in one refugee camp in Kakuma, we have a poultry project, but we're trying to figure out what's the best food source. And the team came to me and said, what can we do for food? And at the same time, as we're having this conversation outside, there's crickets jumping, literally, sticking, And I was like, we can solve this. There's food flying all over the place. So I told them, pack a box of 50 crickets for me. I'm taking them home. And they left. So I brought those crickets home, and you can't really see this, and there's not much to see, but I had this cricket farm made, and I had the adults in here. They did lay eggs, and they did hatch, but, I travel a lot, and I wasn't able to maintain this well, and still learning, but we'll keep trying, but the idea is that, again, it's just connecting doing proper resource mapping with the communities, and really opening our eyes. As I say, take out the old SIM card, put in the new SIM card, right? We're now on Permatel network, so we see a whole new thing, network. But how do we make those connections? So I tell our teams it's not necessarily about doing different things with our programs, it's about doing things differently. And just opening our eyes a bit bigger and seeing all those resources. So anyway, we can move to the back.
Okay, sure.
And I can show you. I did right behind you. Here's our little baby tree nursery. So why not? If I have a ray of sunlight, we can at least try and grow some trees. So these are date palms.
Where did you collect those from?
Here we have a big Muslim community in Kenya, and particularly around Ramadan, we have a lot of dates. But also, I do wild foraging in Dubai Airport, so they have these really fancy dates.
Oh my gosh!
And I asked them if I can, the spittoons where they put the pits. So I asked them if I can have those, and they told me once, no, that's not allowed. That's not hygienic. And I said, please talk to the manager. And those dates are expensive, so I grabbed those pits, came home, we plant them, and just why not try?
Absolutely. All right, we'll follow you out to the back veranda.
Okay, great.
Oh, actually, what's this you've got going on here?
We're doing a lot of seed collection all the time. These are pomegranate from Yemen. This is molokia, which is jute or Jew's mallow.
Wow. Yeah.
These are some bitter gourd. A bottle gourd that an Indian UN military person gave me in a refugee camp in South Sudan. And same with these sponge gourds. We've got, I don't know the names in English. This is mrenda and derema. This is parsley. And so, this is from
carob, is it?
That is carob from Cyprus. And then this is from Vandana Shiva's farm. That's cotton. And this tank, though, is for spirulina production that I want to try.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. And I think I might be able to use compost tea that I make from the worm castings as the mineral source for the spirulina.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, I look forward to seeing that one.
So just off of my bedroom, I have this compost bin. So I really love kind of surprising people with the proximity, the spatial relationships, because people, you would think that compost smells bad because it's a bunch of rotting
stuff.
stuff.
To stick it down the back corner, and actually because it's down the back corner, it becomes a stinking mess.
Right.
If it's close, you look after it, don't you?
Yeah. So, and the secret is carbon, because carbon is the diaper that soaks up the poop, which is the nitrogen.
Yep.
And you want more diaper than poop,
Yes.
right? Hopefully. And so here, this is what I kind of call the rough compost. So we've had baby chicks that died, they go in here. This is really what we have earthworms in here.
Yep.
But this is sort of the long rough compost we put the undesirables in, and it breaks down and does great. So here's the back balcony. And we've got a lot of different things going on here. Again, if you don't have space, make space. So we've kind of made this wall and trellised it. And we've got, things like cassava here. We've got, this is galangal, which is a volunteer that, I've grown it in the past, but it just decided to show up again.
I just love that you have volunteers in your pots on your veranda. I talk about volunteers in my permaculture garden, Crystal Waters, but actually having volunteers, I've just got some self-propagating galangal that's
this
here.
Raspberry is a volunteer. I don't have any idea where this came from or how it got here, or some kind of berry. We've got chili peppers, there's pumpkins. This is chayote squash here, and of course we've got a little bee waterer. It's a great thing to do with wine corks. They're little bee rafts. And then down here we're trying to do a little mushroom garden. So we've put some of the grains of the oyster mushrooms, and they're just myceliating. This is pumpkin. This is another type of Malabar spinach. Here we've got yam bean from Zaytuna. Mm-hmm. And this I think is...
Looks like watermelon.
Is
it or some?
No, I think it's a sponge gourd.
Oh, okay, right.
And then this is a star bean.
Yeah, well, this one's one I've not seen before.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So if you see this little tiny star...
Yep.
That's going to pop up to be a big fat bean that you can slice, or you dry the seeds and eat them like sunflower seeds. Really popular right now in Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia. So here's more Malabar spinach, the local variety, and that's just growing and making a nice little canopy here. We've got strawberries and
there's garlic chives over in the corner. I can see
garlic chives. This is a Somali bean. So the reason I'm growing this is to get more seeds, because this is a perennial bean. Which is great for the refugee camps.
So how long will this last, do you think?
I don't know. It's the first time I've planted it. So you can see we've already got a few little beans coming in.
Yeah.
And then more sweet potatoes, different varieties of sweet potatoes. And then this here is a black soldier fly larva farm. And not enough people know about black soldier fly larvae. They're an amazing little larva that is very, very full of omegas and high quality fats and protein. 5% calcium by volume, so great for egg production. But they eat the stuff that worms don't like, the stinky, the meats, the really fermenty stuff, not the citrus. But if an animal dies in nature, this is the thing that will land, lay its eggs, and they eat that down. So they eat human feces, and increasingly around the world are being used in septic systems.
Fantastic.
Because you can put them in there to eat up all the human waste, pump them out, and then they can go into another livestock system.
So what about the kind of the pit toilets that are here?
Yeah.
Can you use that in those?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's one company called Sanergy that is experimenting with putting them in septic systems, and then pump them out and then send them to the pig farms or the poultry farms. Yep. And the great thing is that they self-harvest, so they'll crawl out, and if you can devise a little system that they crawl out over a fish pond or in your chicken area, the chickens just eat them as they come up. Yeah. And they're a composter also, right?
Yeah.
So it's another stream of reducing.
I've noticed you've got coffee grounds and things also on your...
And charcoal, and sawdust. These are another weeds, papaya trees. These are volunteers. So I'll dig these up and take them to the office. But yeah, we've got, in most of these bins, you'll find earthworms. If we dig it up, everyone has earthworms, just from the compost and all the cycling. They're all in the system. So, and we haven't seen it yet, but there's another small balcony, which is probably similar to what a lot of people have who live in apartments. But even in that little space, we've got containers and growing at least some spinach and leaves. If you can fit a pot on a windowsill, you can grow a basil plant.
Yeah, that's right. And you can have, culinary herbs, medicinal herbs, edible flowers.
We've got this chayote.
Yeah, great. And do you eat the leaves of these too?
You can. I give them sometimes to the chickens. Yeah. And, if nothing else, the leaves are biomass.
Yeah, that's right.
And so...
And shade, too.
Yeah, shade and biomass and carbon that just go back into the system to keep building soil.
And so you also have one of my favourites here, the pumpkin growing. So, the eating the pumpkin leaves is part of your... What's this one here?
That, I'm not sure what that is. I think that's just a weed that's come up.
Just wondered whether
is it an edible?
Feels soft. Oh. It smells like the wild sesame.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
So,
Perilla. Perilla.
Oh.
It could be. I think it is. Because there's purple perilla, green perilla. Just has that nutty smell about it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the perilla that I know.
Self-seeds really readily.
Yeah, so...
Oh, and behind us here.
Oh, right. So, I waited long for a ladybird to show up in my garden. And when I finally saw her, I wanted to make her a palace. So this is Bugham Palace. Yeah, that's free Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Bad jokes. So, but basically what I realized is that there are insects coming into the system, and I want to make a habitat for them. So they can lounge in the hotel, and they've got an all-you-can-eat buffet. Yeah. And, it's experimental, but what we see is that there's tons of little people taking up, occupation in here. I don't even know who these are. Like these guys, I guess these are wasps,
aren't they?
Yeah, I think
some are making little sort of paper covers. Others are shoving in.
And we've got mud ones, and there's spiders, and I don't know how these got plugged up, but so. And I've seen more lizards here and birds. So because if you look at
biodiversity on a balcony, it's doable.
Yeah, I mean it's a little ecosystem, which is interesting because if you can see, what the other apartments look like, we've got one of these too. Part of the ecosystem. It's it's a kind of a little concrete jungle, and so a bird flying over will see this, and they pick away at the strings for their nests, and that's okay, right? That's fair share. So they take these little fibers to go build their nests, but they bring happiness and color, and they're little turquoise birds and red birds. But I mean, we do have monkeys sometimes as well. I had a problem a few years ago, really bad. I would come out in the morning with my coffee and find my kale all over the roof. And
so one of the questions I want to ask you was about how you keep the water up to these plants? And so what's your watering strategy for these? And also how often do you keep adding material? Do you keep adding material, or do you actually tip them out and restructure them?
Both. You know, it is harder to manage soil in a pot.
Yeah, that's
and it
right.
can get compacted, and so we do a bit of everything. I do like to put handfuls of earthworms because they're really drilling and
that's right.
churning
Keep
that
it
up.
alive, yeah.
And keep it soft and stuff. So it's ad hoc. I mean, it's also about my schedule because I travel like crazy, and my housekeeper is the farm manager. We call this the 5th floor farm. She's the farm manager. That's Susie. So we'll add mulch when we have it. When we've got, we've got plenty of stuff right now, material that we're just trying to get into the system and broken down. But water, we water from the tap, but also, I do always try to, if it's raining, put the buckets out and catch some of that rainwater. But the other thing that I like to do is catch or capture water from the sink. So if I'm straining pasta, I like to do that into a bucket. If I'm washing something and it's not too soapy, I'll toss that into the bucket. And then, by the end of the day, you've got a whole full bucket. And if you've got all this carbonaceous material and, organic matter in your soil, it doesn't take a lot because it will really,
that's right.
Soak it up.
And so do you also make your own liquid fertilizers from the worms and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so what we do is I make a compost tea. I take castings from the earthworms, put that into a bucket, and add a bubbler, a nozzle. So we aerate that. And then I've been adding molasses, but I think that what the latest research is actually encouraging more of ancient grain flours and maybe a shot of milk for protein, and not a big shot of sugar because then there's too much rapid multiplication of the bacteria.
So that's Dr. Elaine Ingham's work. Yeah. Fantastic.
So, but we've made comfrey tea. I was growing comfrey, but then I realized that comfrey in a pot doesn't make much sense because the good thing about comfrey,
it's the deep nutrient miner, I know.
It's a by
it would still be doing
dynamic accumulator from where?
If you've got good soil, I suppose it's sucking that in, and then you can.
And the chickens love to eat it. But I've taken that and other weeds, and we'll just ferment them down, leave it until it gets super stinky. And then a lot of different things. Oh, and then I make a banana tea. So I have a beautiful vase that I bought from here in Kenya, and I don't like to buy flowers because the flower industry here uses a lot of chemicals. So, but I want to enjoy my vase, right? So sometimes if I buy bananas, I'll put the vase on the kitchen sink, and then the banana peels just go into, I fill it with water, and I just leave it, and I give it a few stirs every day, and by the end of the week, when I finish my bananas, I've got this potassium-rich, liquid fertilizer, and then I just put that onto the...
Thank you.
Yeah, and the bananas break down, and just keep stirring it.
So just a week?
Yeah,
Or longer?
I don't know, I eyeball it. The nose knows.
Right?
Oh,
wow, I'm going to try that.
I've
never thought about doing that.
Yeah, banana tea.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I get to enjoy the vase, so...
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow, that's awesome. So do you are you happy to show us the last little balcony?
Sure, yeah.
Let's go there.
Oh, I did want to show you this egg production we've got. So we've had 6 or more eggs today.
Yeah, and they've still got a beautiful...
Yeah, we get plenty of eggs, and they're
beautiful little eggs because they're bantam chickens, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, before you go outside, you were saying something about these.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us quickly the recipe for these?
So, it's really simple. You can just use any seeds. I didn't make these, I bought these, but I have made them, and they're always very popular. They don't last long. You can take seeds like sesame, flax, sunflower, pumpkin seeds, and then you just do, for example, 500 grams. So you do 5 seeds, 100 grams each, and then you mix 2 or 3 tablespoons of the psyllium husk powder and add hot water, and it gets all mucilaginous and slimy, and then you just spread it thinly onto your baking surface and then lightly bake it, and it just creates a really crispy...
They're so light and fluffy.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to try them.
Yeah, it's so easy.
I think we should... I'll have to put the recipe... Send me the recipe and then I can spread that one out too.
So here's our tiny balcony, and we've got 3 pots out here, and I could fit more on here.
Yeah.
I've been thinking of, how could we do a whole trellis here and enclose this? But we've just got, some spinach and chard and sweet potatoes. This volunteer is turmeric that has come up. And I like having turmeric because I like when the leaves are big, I can use them for steaming. Or if I'm serving a Southeast Asian meal.
Yeah.
I like to put that as the plate,
Yeah.
you know, as it's decorative. And then at the end of the day, actually, let me show you one last thing.
Yes, sure.
So last time I harvested the turmeric, what I did was I dried it and just dried it out in the sun, and then grounded it up and made balcony turmeric powder.
Oh my gosh, your own turmeric powder.
Yeah, and I love this because, you know, the idea of doing value addition in a small space. So again, if you're a refugee woman and can, you know, have a few pots of turmeric, and I mean, not that you're gonna make huge amounts of money, and the scale, but even just for my home use.
Oh, it smells amazing.
Yeah. But I love that it comes kind of full circle like that.
Yeah, sorry, I think
No
I
worries.
dropped a tiny bit.
That's messy stuff. No worries.
I'll just wipe it up.
So, and then we've got like this tea. So I showed you that star bean. The star
just
bean.
flopping the turmeric.
No worries. I showed you the star bean that's growing out there. So these are the leaves that we dry for tea.
So what do you call it?
Sacha inchi.
Sacha inchi.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
That's the star bean.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So yeah.
Okay.
And then we've got, you know, for my travels, like these are raisins from Yemen. That's from Myanmar. We've got flaxseed from Ethiopia, basil seed from Cambodia, palm sugar from Cambodia.
So what do you do with basil seed? Because what I found is that most people in Australia, in many parts of the world, actually just let their basil go to seed and it just falls over, and they don't even think about collecting it or eating it.
So in Southeast Asia, you know what bubble tea is?
Yes.
You know that like slimy little newt eyes?
Yeah.
So what they do is, this is called krupchi in Khmer, and they take this and soak it in coconut milk and add palm sugar and this, what's it called? Pandan leaf, which is like has kind of a vanilla essence, and then you just chill that, and it becomes a liquidy eye of newt dessert.
Wow.
In coconut, so it's for that texture, that kind of slimy little.
But I've also heard they grind it up as part of a flavor as well.
I'm sure. I mean,
so many uses for it.
Yeah. But they definitely use it a lot as a dessert, and I think it has a digestive.
Yeah, well, I guess it has that mucilaginous type thing that helps to.
And then here I'm doing a lot of. I came back with like 10 kilos of honey from Ethiopia, so I'm doing honey garlic fermented. It's really
Can I smell that?
I have to fart it. Yeah. And then, my family's from Poland, and when we had a cough as children, the women would slice up onions, put sugar on it, and it would sweat this syrup, and they gave us that syrup. So I just decided to do that with honey, and that one smells not great.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah. So, there's
your
never-ending projects.
Wonderful things, and you've been feeding us kefir and amazing things from all over.
Yeah.
Your work takes you to such interesting, what do you say, 60 countries you've been?
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah. No, it's been, it's good. I enjoy traveling and learning and seeing how many versions there are of how to do human.
Yeah. And also I think what's fascinating too is that to start to see plants and food differently, and all the different parts that we often just walk past or completely overlook because we've forgotten. We've forgotten what's food. It's not just the rice and the wheat and the the standards, spuds and all that.
We suffer from plant blindness.
We do. So I think, the opportunity...
This crew you've got is not that professional.
So the opportunity to be able to go and learn from cultures that have so much rich and in-depth knowledge still about all those plants, and they haven't forgotten yet.
They're intact with the landscape still. Yeah.
I mean, many cultures have forgotten, or it's, you've got to go to the elders, but still, this, what you've been able to witness and to bring back alive and to share with other people, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I enjoy it, and I'm always like the connections keep kind of emerging, you know. Yeah. So no, I enjoy it, and
so you're working mostly with women in refugee environments, or
anyone affected by displacement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, we're just looking at design solutions at the shelter or the camp or the community level on water security, and it can go up to even, land restoration around camps and, how we do water, how we save seeds, how we grow food in small spaces. And, we're getting a lot of gardens right now.
So the value of permaculture for this type of context, what's your take on that?
I mean, permaculture is just an obvious design solution to any problems that we have as humans in any context or scale, right? It's about how do we solve for the problems in ways that nature might do that, starting with green chemistry, by the way, right? And shifting to bioplastics and looking at all the opportunities within and around. And, it's not only refugee camps. You have refugees in urban areas.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, there's so many opportunities. And when we look at, the more kind of points of juncture that we have in a system, the more resilient the whole system is. And so when we look at symbiotic relationships between waste and any materials and fibers, do a fiber shed mapping. The coconut coir, hemp, the silks, the cottons, the waste products, the materials, the bones, the blood, everything, and how can we give that another spin on the merry-go-round, and how do we create enterprise out of that so that people are resilient socially, financially, ecologically, in many ways.
So what you're asking is for people to shift their perception about what it is that they see around them, just to see, not to bring in anything new necessarily, but to see differently what they have available. So what's your first starting point in doing that?
I mean, you go, in the Somali refugee camps, for example, people are doing ablution, which means they're washing their feet up to 5 times a day, and that can be a liter per person. And if you're in a family of 5, that is a lot of liters of water. And so that literally gets dropped onto the ground where it either evaporates or it puddles and pools and creates a diseased Disneyland, And so immediately we can just put that water into production and dig a hole, even if all you're doing is taking leaf matter and plant residue and some food scraps and putting that in the soil with water. You're already activating the life that's in the soil. But then you throw a seed in there, you plant some bananas around it, and you start to create this tiny little micro jungle around a refugee camp, which by the way can bring down heat island effect. When we focus on urban ecology at the camp context, then we bring down temperatures.
And also addressing disease, because you're addressing that health issue of the cooling water.
So pathogens and just health, the stress from being in a hot environment.
So it means going into a place with really open eyes and finding the points of connection, the very small, simple starting points, and then weaving it from that, rather than sort of, I've got big ideas and I've got a solution for you. It's coming in.
Go and see what's there, and at that level. So I'll give you an example. I was on the Burundi-Tanzania border, and this old man had his shelter in a camp, and he had strung up a bunch of strings. He made a big pit, and he had strings trellised out of it on a structure he made, and he was trying to grow passion fruit. There were a lot of trees around there, and there were leaves everywhere, dried leaves everywhere, and then just across from it was a tippy tap. Do you know what a tippy tap is? A little water point that you just tip, And so I just said, please take all of these leaves, put them into that pit, and move the tippy tap next to that, and then make, with a spoon or a stick, a little channel so that water can go in there. And when I said that, he immediately knew what I meant. And so connection. I've done nothing. There's no money that's been spent. The input.
No new technologies.
It's just that knowledge is the input. We don't have to have expensive inputs. It's knowledge is the input. And so the minute I said that, I mean, he completely got it. And so he started immediately sweeping the leaves in there. And
fantastic.
And so kitchen water, cooking water, bathing water, all those are resources.
And so it's trying to find so many extra uses along the way for absolutely everything that's in the system, so that it, from the source to the sink, everything has as many uses as possible. And what, like you're saying, what goes out is basically what comes out of the toilet, but what goes into the toilet then has another use anyway. So it's the whole cyclical system, really, isn't it?
And so back to the original point that I started with is, here in my system, there's, I'll turn a piece of cardboard into compost, into food, and then that leaves through my toilet, and not just putting the garbage, the cardboard box in the garbage bin.
Or into the recycling bin in Australia. You go, I've done a good thing, I've put cardboard into the recycling.
That's fake news, by the way. That's fake news.
It is, isn't it? we're very good at separating our waste now, but still creating an abundance of it and still sending it off.
Yeah.
It's madness.
To that place called away.
So thanks so much, Natalie. It's just been an absolute pleasure to stay with you here and to talk all about the things that you've been doing and to see how you can do permaculture on a balcony, and not just a few pots of greens, but actually all the system, that whole the cycles and the life that you've brought into this place and the ecology. It's been amazing. And thank you for sharing it.
Of course, it's a good journey. Not all perfect, a lot of lessons, but keep trying.
But isn't that what it's all about?
For sure. It's been a lot of fun learning.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thanks.